Welcome to the John Cady podcast. I'm John Cady, U.S. Navy retired, former minister. This episode is going back to some, unfortunately, very familiar territory for me, having been a licensed minister in a religious organization for over a decade. And one of the most hot-button topics that any church deals with concerns where the money goes. Some church organizations have it in their bylaws where once the money leaves the parishioner's hand and is placed in the envelope or in the offering plate, that the parishioner has relinquished all control over how that money is to be used and where it goes. In my former church, that was in the bylaws at the time, in the early 2000s. There is a possibility that that might have changed. It's been a long time since I've been a member. But at that time, it was written that once the money left the parishioners' hands, they had no control over where it went and how it was to be used. And why does that play into today's episode? Well, real simple. I'm reading here a news release, and it talks about a federal judge out of Sherman, Texas, a U.S. District Judge, Amos Mazant of the Eastern District of Texas, dismissed a class action lawsuit accusing Gateway Church and its founding pastor, Robert Morris, of misrepresenting how millions of dollars in tithes and offerings were spent. For those who don't know, Robert Morris was the former pastor of Gateway Church, as well as the founder of it. He was sentenced to 6 months in county jail for crimes against a minor back in the early 1980s. And instead of going to a state prison, he did 6 months in Osage County Jail in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, much to the outrage of everybody involved and especially the community at large. And the fact that he got off with such a light sentence with only 6 months behind bars and the rest of the time to be served on probation, it was seen as a lenient sentence compared to the damage done to the young girl whom he harmed. But I digress. We are going to focus on the monetary aspect here. And what happened? Of course, Gateway Church called it vindication. Robert Morris issued a statement insisting that not $1 was misdirected, and his attorney, who is a partner at the Dallas firm Haynes Boone, declared the First Amendment had protected the church from an assault on Gateway's religious autonomy and freedom. But here's what the donors alleged. The donors alleged there were 4 plaintiffs, Catherine and Gary Leach, and Mark and Terry Browder, former members seeking to represent a class of donors, did not walk into the court with grievances. They walked in with a receipt. In other words, they had proof that they had put money into this religious organization. They had put money into the plate and expecting the money to be used for the betterment of the ministry and the gospel. The allegations were that Gateway claimed and repeatedly and specifically promised that at least 15% of every dollar put into the offerings plate would go to global missions and Jewish ministry partners. That promise, and I'm reading the article here, they said, was preached from the platform, printed in the members' handbook, repeated at conferences, and posted on the church's own website. They gave generously on the strength of it, and when they went looking for proof the money had landed where it was promised, well, they couldn't find it. They alleged the funds were diverted to unnamed secret organizations, in quotes, and other purposes, and that the church's accounting was never transparent enough to substantiate otherwise. They called the lawsuit a last resort, filed only after repeated attempts to get a straight answer had failed. And this isn't a doctrinal dispute, it's a question that any honest steward should be able to answer in an afternoon. Did the money go where you said it would go? And how a fraud claim became religious? Well, according to the news release, the court never reached that question. Judge Mazant dismissed the case under the ecclesiastical abstention clause doctrine, a 150-year-old court-created principle rooted in the First Amendment that keeps civil courts from refereeing internal matters of church doctrine and governance. Now, the part that the press release leaves out, Mazant had already denied this motion once before in 2025, and what changed his mind was not new evidence about the money, but it was a new appellate ruling, the Fifth Circuit Court's September 25 decision in McCraney versus North American Mission Board, and that one broadly expanded the shield around religious institutions. The Gateway Church didn't win because the facts shifted. They won because the wall got higher. Now, what does that mean? That means that basically churches now have more protections than before when it comes to handling the money that's put into the plate. We put in it in goodwill. We expect the money to go towards the betterment of the community, the betterment of the ministry, and instead we find out that money has been diverted to other things. Whether it's things that the church doesn't want to talk about, or unexpected little perks like a brand new Hummer, a nice 6-bedroom house somewhere, being able to jet set and take expensive vacations while the majority of the congregation is unable to travel because they can't afford it. My friends at Church Folk Revolution used to say that if your pastor is living in a brand new mansion and you're renting on Section 8, your pastor might be a pimp preacher. If he's telling you to tithe off your food stamps and your SSI or your retirement pension, and yet he's living high on the hog and be able to travel around the world, he might be a pimp preacher. Yes, that's a term we haven't used in a while, but they're poverty pimps. They keep the congregation in poverty, and the congregation keeps thinking, well, it's okay. There has to be a reason. God has a reason for all this happening. God isn't always in the financial decision-making process of ministers. There are ministers who will listen to the voice of God, and those ministers should be upheld and respected. But unfortunately, we have the bad apples who are opaque, don't want to tell anybody where the money's going, whether it be for the personal vacations, slush funds for harassment cases and lawsuits that were due to the misconduct of said pastor, and the list goes on and on. It's just that now, thanks to this court ruling, it's going to be more difficult for parishioners when a pastor goes wrong to be able to hold him accountable. At least in the courts anyway. When that pastor stands before God, everything's going to be exposed and out in the open. But until then, people are just going to have to be more diligent, and they're going to have to confront that pastor in person and not just take it on blind faith that what goes into the plate is going to where you think it's going to go. It may very well not. This is John Cady. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you like the content, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'm looking forward to you on the next one.